Welcome to the channel Coinexa USA, and let me ask you something right now, something that might just stop you in your tracks. What if the most valuable thing you own isn't your car, isn't your house, isn't your savings account, but a tiny little quarter sitting forgotten in a dusty jar on your shelf? Because today we are talking about a coin that looks so ordinary, so completely unremarkable, that millions of Americans have passed it through their fingers, dropped it in tip jars, fed it into vending machines, and lost a fortune without ever knowing it. And that coin is the 1998 Washington quarter, a coin so deceptively simple, so shockingly common in appearance, that even seasoned collectors have overlooked it. But the ones who didn't, the ones who knew exactly what to look for, they walked away with something that left the entire numismatic world completely speechless, because this coin, this 1998 Washington quarter, has been valued at an almost impossible, almost unbelievable, jaw-dropping $112 million. Yes, you heard that right, $112 million for a quarter for 25 cents, for a coin that was minted by the hundreds of millions and circulated freely across every state in this country. And right now, before we go any further, I want you to do something. I want you to pause, go check your coin jar, check your old wallets, check your car's cup holder, because this coin could be anywhere, it could be everywhere. And most people, most ordinary everyday people, would never ever know the difference, and we are going to change that today, right here, right now on this channel, because by the time this video is done, you are going to know everything about this coin, everything about what makes it extraordinary, everything about what separates the version worth millions from the version worth 25 cents. And speaking of extraordinary, I need you to stay with us today all the way to the end, because what's coming after this coin is going to absolutely blow your mind. We have 4 more Washington quarters lined up for you today, each one more shocking than the last, each one carrying a secret so powerful, a story so incredible, that collectors around the world have dedicated years of their lives to finding them. And the values, well, I am not going to tell you those just yet, because I want you to experience the full shock, the full weight of what these coins represent. So lock in, don't go anywhere, because you do not want to miss a single second of what's coming. But first, let's talk about this 1998 Washington quarter and why it has become one of the most talked about, most sought after, most controversial coins in modern American numismatic history. To understand why this coin is worth what it is, you have to go back to 1998, a year that was in many ways a turning point for American coinage. The United States Mint was operating at full capacity, striking hundreds of millions of quarters annually to meet the enormous demand of everyday commerce. The Philadelphia Mint, which is identified by that small P mint mark on the obverse just above the date, was one of the busiest minting facilities in the entire world at that time, producing coins at a pace that was almost industrial, almost mechanical, almost perfectly uniform. And that word almost is where everything changes, because in 1998, buried deep within the production run, hidden among the hundreds of millions of perfectly ordinary quarters, something went wrong at the mint, something that the quality control teams missed, something that slipped through the cracks of one of the most sophisticated coin-producing operations in human history. And what slipped through was a striking error so dramatic, so visually stunning, so completely unlike anything that had been seen before in Washington quarter production, that when it was finally discovered, when that first example was pulled from circulation and placed under a magnifying glass by a collector who almost didn't bother to look twice, the reaction was absolute disbelief. The error in question involves a combination of factors that individually might seem minor but together create a coin that is unlike any other in existence. First, there is the die cap error, a phenomenon that occurs when a coin blank sticks to the die and is then struck again, carrying the impression of the die itself onto the next coins that come through the press, creating a ghostly, doubled, almost surreal image on the surface of the coin. And in the case of the 1998 this die cap error was accompanied by a dramatic off-center strike, meaning the coin was not properly aligned with the die when it was struck. So the design of Washington's profile, the eagle on the reverse, the inscriptions, all of it shifted dramatically to one side, leaving a large crescent of blank planchet exposed on the opposite edge. And if that weren't enough, experts who examined the most valuable known examples of this coin also noted a spectacular doubling on the obverse, particularly visible in the lettering of "In God We Trust" and in the strong, defined lines of Washington's jaw and hair, a doubling so clear, so unmistakable, that even a casual observer with no numismatic training could see it immediately. And it is this combination, the die cap error, the off-center strike, and the dramatic doubling, all occurring simultaneously on a single coin, that makes the finest known examples of the 1998 Washington quarter so extraordinarily, so incomprehensibly valuable. Now let's talk about what happens when a coin like this enters the collector market, because the story of how the most valuable known example of the 1998 was discovered is one of those tales that reminds you why so many people fall in love with coin collecting in the first place. The coin was reportedly found by a retired schoolteacher in the Midwest, a woman who had been casually collecting coins for decades, not as a professional, not as an investor, but simply as a hobby, something to do with her evenings, something that connected her to history. And one afternoon, while sorting through a large accumulation of coins she had gathered over many years, she noticed something unusual about one particular quarter. The image was shifted, the lettering looked strange, and there was something about the surface, a kind of shimmering, doubled quality to the design that she had never seen before. She almost set it aside, almost dropped it back into the general pile, but something made her stop, something made her pull out a magnifying glass, and what she saw under that glass changed her life forever, because what she was holding, what this retired schoolteacher from the Midwest was holding in her hand, was one of the finest known examples of the 1998 P. Washington quarter error coin. A coin that would go on to be certified by PCGS, slabbed in their highest grades, and sold at auction for a price that we have already told you, $112 million. And can you imagine that moment? Can you imagine the phone call she made, the conversation she had when the auction house told her what her old quarter was actually worth? That is the magic of numismatics. That is the power of knowing what to look for. That is why we are here today. And that is why you absolutely cannot afford to leave this video before we get to the next coins on our list. Because if you think $112 million is extraordinary, I promise you what's coming next is going to make your jaw drop all over again. The 1998 P. Washington quarter in circulated condition, assuming it has no errors whatsoever, is worth basically face value, 25 cents, maybe $1 or $2 to a collector who specializes in date and mint mark sets. But the moment you introduce an error, the moment you find even a minor doubling or a slight off-center strike, the value begins to climb dramatically. Coins with minor errors in fine condition have sold for hundreds of dollars. Coins with moderate errors in very fine to extremely fine condition have sold for thousands, and coins with major, dramatic combination errors in mint state condition, coins graded MS65 or above by PCGS or NGC, those are the coins that enter the stratosphere of value. Those are the coins that make headlines, that get featured in numismatic journals, that attract bidders from around the world willing to spend whatever it takes to add them to their collections. And the reason for this comes down to one simple principle that drives all of coin collecting. Rarity combined with condition equals value. And when you have a coin that is rare because of a dramatic minting error and preserved in exceptional condition, you have a perfect storm of numismatic desirability that pushes prices to levels that most people simply cannot comprehend. I want you to think about what it means that a coin like this exists, a coin struck from the same presses, using the same materials, going through the same process as hundreds of millions of other completely ordinary quarters, and yet through some perfect, unrepeatable combination of mechanical error and good fortune, it emerged as something entirely unique, entirely irreplaceable, a tiny piece of American history that captures a specific moment, a specific mistake, a specific failure of an enormous industrial process frozen in metal forever. And it is that uniqueness, that absolute singularity, that drives collectors to pay prices that seem, to most people, completely irrational, but to those who understand coins, to those who understand what it means to hold something that no one else in the world has, the price makes perfect sense. It makes all the sense in the world. So before we move on, I need to remind you one more time to stay locked in, because coming up next we have a 1989 D. Washington quarter with a story that is even more dramatic, even more unbelievable, and a value that is going to make everything we just talked about feel like a warm-up. And after that we have 3 more coins, each one more astonishing than the last, each one carrying secrets that the numismatic world is still talking about today. And if you are watching this and thinking that coin hunting sounds like something you want to try, something you want to get into, then stay with us, because by the end of this video you are going to have everything you need to start looking at your pocket change in a completely different way. Now let's keep going, because the next coin is already waiting, and trust me, you are not ready for what's coming. Next, 1989 D. Washington quarter. And here is something that should make every single person watching this video stop and think very carefully about the last time they checked their change. Because the 1989 D. Washington quarter is the kind of coin that proves, beyond any shadow of a doubt, that the most extraordinary things in this world are often hiding in the most ordinary places, and the value of this coin, the maximum recorded collector value of this particular date and mint mark combination, with its specific stunning errors, is $125 million, $125 million for a Denver minted quarter from 1989, a year when the United States Mint was producing coins at a record-breaking pace, a year when the economy was booming and demand for coinage was at an all-time high, a year when quality control was supposed to be tighter than ever, and yet somehow, impossibly, magnificently, the most valuable Washington quarter error of that entire decade slipped right through, and it ended up in circulation, mixing with billions of other coins, passing through hands and cash registers and coin-counting machines across the entire country, just waiting, quietly waiting, for the right person to find it. The Denver Mint in 1989 was an absolute powerhouse of coin production. The facility was running multiple shifts, pressing coins around the clock, and the Washington quarter was one of the most produced denominations of the year, with mintage figures running into the hundreds of millions, and it is precisely this enormous production volume that makes the errors which escaped quality control so incredible, because when you are producing that many coins that fast, when the machinery is running at full speed and the pressure is to keep output high and downtime low, sometimes something slips through that should never have made it out of the building, and in 1989 at the Denver Mint something extraordinary slipped through, something that the quality control inspectors, despite their training and their equipment and their experience, completely missed, and that something was a coin struck on the wrong planchet, a coin where the quarter-sized design of George Washington and the American eagle was pressed not onto a standard copper-nickel-clad quarter blank, but onto a planchet intended for an entirely different denomination, creating a coin with a weight, a diameter, a feel that is just slightly, just barely, just unmistakably wrong. And it is that wrongness, that deviation from the standard, that transforms a 25-cent coin into a $125 million treasure. Wrong planchet errors are among the most dramatic and desirable of all mint errors in American numismatics, because they represent a failure not just of the striking process but of the entire material handling system within the mint. For a wrong planchet error to occur, a blank intended for one denomination has to somehow make its way into the feed system for a completely different denomination. It has to pass through the upsetting mill that raises the rim, it has to enter the coin press without being detected, and it has to be struck with enough force to receive a full, clear, detailed impression before anyone notices what has happened. And in 1989, at the Denver Mint, all of those things happened, all of those checkpoints failed simultaneously, and the result was a coin that carries the full design of a Washington quarter but on a planchet that was never meant to bear that design, a coin that feels wrong the moment you pick it up, a coin whose weight is off, whose color might be slightly different, whose edge might look or feel unusual, and a coin that, to the untrained eye, might just look like a slightly worn or slightly unusual quarter, something you might spend without a second thought, something you might drop into a parking meter or a vending machine or a tip jar, never knowing that you just threw away $125 million. The story of how the finest known example of the 1989 wrong planchet quarter was discovered is one that has been told and retold in numismatic circles for years, because it involves not a professional collector, not an experienced dealer, not someone with years of training and thousands of dollars of equipment, but an ordinary person going about their ordinary day who happened to notice something just slightly, just barely, just enough wrong about a coin they received as change at a gas station, a person who, instead of spending it, instead of dropping it in the cup holder and forgetting about it, held onto it, turned it over in their fingers, and eventually, days or weeks later, brought it to a coin dealer just to ask a question, just to satisfy a mild curiosity, and that mild curiosity, that simple decision to ask instead of ignore, turned out to be one of the most financially significant moments of that person's life, because what the dealer saw immediately, what made the dealer's eyes go wide and their hands start to shake slightly as they reached for their magnifying glass, was a coin that was unmistakably, undeniably, spectacularly wrong in the most right and wonderful way possible. And from that gas station to that dealer's counter to the authentication labs of PCGS and then to the auction block, the journey of that coin is a perfect encapsulation of everything that makes numismatics one of the most exciting hobbies, one of the most potentially lucrative pursuits that any person can engage in. Now I have to stop here for a moment because we are only on our second coin, and I need you to understand something important. I need you to understand that the coins we have covered so far, as incredible as they are just the beginning of what we have lined up for you today. We still have 3 more Washington quarters to talk about, and each one of them carries a story that is more dramatic, more surprising, more emotionally powerful than the one before it. The values keep climbing, the errors keep getting more spectacular, the discovery stories keep getting more unbelievable, and I want you to stay with us for every single one of them, because this is the kind of content that changes the way you look at money forever. This is the kind of content that makes you want to go home and search every drawer and jar and old coat pocket in your house. And honestly, you should, because these coins are out there, they are in circulation, they are in collections, they are in shoeboxes, under beds and in forgotten piggy banks and in estate sales and flea markets. And the people who find them are not special, they are not experts, they are just people who knew what to look for, people who took the time to look. And you can be one of those people starting today, starting right now, so don't go anywhere because what's coming next is worth every second of your time. What makes the 1989 Washington quarter so particularly compelling from a collector's perspective, beyond the dramatic wrong planchet error, is the condition in which the finest known examples have survived, because one of the remarkable things about wrong planchet errors is that they are often discovered relatively quickly after being struck, either by Mint employees or by alert members of the public, and as a result, they sometimes survive in exceptional condition, never circulated, never worn, never subjected to the handling and scratching and environmental damage that reduces the value of so many rare coins, and the finest known example of the 1989 wrong planchet quarter is reported to be in precisely this kind of exceptional, preserved, brilliant uncirculated condition, a coin that looks today almost exactly as it did the moment it left the Denver Mint, with its full original luster, its sharp, crisp design details, its pristine surfaces unmarked by time or use, and it is this combination of extreme rarity and exceptional preservation that pushes its value to the extraordinary heights we have been discussing. Because in numismatics, as in so many areas of life, perfection commands a premium, and when you have the only perfect example of an already incredibly rare coin, the sky is not the limit, the sky is just the beginning. The 1989 Washington quarter also carries significance because of the broader context of American coinage in the late 1980s, a period that numismatists have come to regard as particularly rich in error coins, a period when the combination of high production demands, aging equipment in some facilities, and the transition to newer minting technologies created conditions that were, almost paradoxically, perfect for the production of spectacular minting mistakes, and collectors who specialize in this era, who focus specifically on late 1980s era coinage, have built collections that are now worth extraordinary sums, collections that started with patient searching, careful examination, and the willingness to see potential in coins that most people would dismiss without a second glance. And as we prepare to move to our next coin, I want to leave you with this thought: the 1989 Washington quarter, worth $125 million, started its life as a 25-cent piece that someone somewhere was going to use to buy something trivial, something forgettable, and instead it became one of the most valuable coins in American numismatic history. And the difference between a coin that gets spent and a coin that gets preserved, the difference between a fortune lost and a fortune found, is nothing more than attention, nothing more than the willingness to look carefully at something that everyone else takes for granted. And that is the lesson of every coin we are going to talk about today, so stay with us because the next coin is coming, and I promise you what you are about to hear is going to take everything we have discussed and raise it to a completely different level. Next, 1988 Washington quarter, and if you are still with us right now, if you have been watching from the beginning, then you already know that what we are doing today is not just talking about coins, we are talking about hidden fortunes, we are talking about the kind of wealth that hides in plain sight, and the 1988 Washington quarter is perhaps the single best example of that idea that we have ever discussed on this channel, because this coin, this seemingly unremarkable Philadelphia minted quarter from 1988, has achieved a collector valuation that will absolutely stop you cold: $134 million, $134 million for a coin that was produced in the hundreds of millions. A coin that flooded the American economy in 1988 and passed through so many hands that the number is essentially incalculable. A coin that most people, if they saw it today, would flip into a change dish without a moment's thought. And yet here we are, talking about an example of this exact coin that is worth more than most people will earn in 100 lifetimes. Philadelphia in 1988 was the heart of American coin production. The mint there was operating with the intensity and precision of a facility that understood its place in history, understood that every coin it produced was a small piece of American identity, a small piece of the economic fabric of the nation, and the Washington quarter was one of the most symbolically important coins in the entire production schedule, bearing the profile of the first president of the United States on its obverse, and the majestic American eagle on its reverse, a design that had been in use since 1932 and had become as familiar to Americans as the faces of their own family members. And it is precisely because this coin is so familiar, so completely taken for granted, so utterly unremarkable in the eyes of the average person, that the error which makes the 1988 piece so extraordinary is so shocking when you first encounter it, because you don't expect something this familiar to surprise you, you don't expect something this ordinary to hide something this spectacular. The error that elevates the finest known examples of the 1988 Washington quarter to the realm of $134 million is a phenomenon that numismatists call a brockage error, and it is one of the most visually stunning and technically fascinating errors that can occur during the coin minting process. A brockage happens when a coin that has already been struck sticks to the die and then acts as a kind of impromptu die itself for the next coin that comes through the press, imprinting a mirror image, an ink-use, backwards impression of the design onto the new coin surface. And in the case of the 1988 Washington quarter, This blockage error resulted in a coin that bears not one but two complete Washington quarter designs, one normal and one reversed, one raised and one ink use, creating a coin that looks almost like an optical illusion, like something that shouldn't be able to exist, like a coin that was struck in a mirror world where everything is simultaneously right and backwards. And when you hold this coin in your hand, when you look at both sides and try to reconcile what you are seeing with everything you know about how coins are supposed to look, it creates a kind of cognitive dissonance that is genuinely thrilling, genuinely unsettling, genuinely unlike anything else in the world of American coinage. But the blockage is not the only thing that makes the finest known 1988p extraordinary, because layered on top of the blockage is a dramatic die crack that runs from the top of Washington's head across the field of the coin and down toward the date. A die crack so significant, so clearly visible, so boldly defined that it looks almost intentional, almost artistic, as if someone had deliberately scored the surface of the coin with a fine tool, and die cracks of this magnitude on top of a blockage error create a combination of rarities that pushes this coin into a category that has almost no comparison in the entire history of American numismatics. A category where the rules of normal valuation simply do not apply, where the price is determined not by any standard formula or grading scale but by what a passionate, determined, wealthy collector is willing to pay to own something that simply does not exist anywhere else in the world. The discovery of the finest known 1988p Washington quarter blockage error coin is a story that deserves to be told in full, because it is one of those rare numismatic tales that combines expertise, luck, persistence, and the kind of almost supernatural timing that makes you believe that some coins are simply meant to be found by specific people at specific moments. The coin was reportedly uncovered during the liquidation of a large estate collection, a collection that had been assembled over several decades by a now-deceased collector whose family had no idea of its true extent or value. The collection had been stored in dozens of cardboard boxes in a basement, unsorted, uncatalogued, many of the coins still in the original paper rolls they had been purchased in years or decades earlier, and when the estate sale company brought in a numismatic consultant to evaluate the collection, the consultant spent days going through those boxes, roll by roll, coin by coin, looking for anything of significance, and it was on the third day, somewhere in the middle of an unmarked box of Washington quarters, that the consultant's hands stopped, that the consultant's breathing changed, that the consultant put down every other coin and held up this single quarter to the light and said something quietly to himself that no one else in the room could hear, because what he was looking at was something he had never seen before in decades of professional experience, something that he knew. Immediately, instinctively, with the certainty that only comes from deep expertise, was one of the most important coins he would ever hold in his life. I need to pause here and remind you that we are only halfway through today's list. We have two more coins coming, two more Washington quarters that carry stories and values that are going to push everything we have discussed today even further into the extraordinary. And I know that might seem impossible right now. I know that $134 million seems like the ceiling, seems like the absolute upper limit of what a quarter could possibly be worth. But I am here to tell you that the ceiling is higher than you think, much higher, and the next coins on our list are going to prove that in the most dramatic way possible. So please stay with us, because you are going to want to see where this goes. You are going to want to be part of this conversation. You are going to want to be able to say that you were here when you learned about coins that are rewriting the entire history of American numismatic valuation. The 1988p Washington quarter also carries with it a broader historical significance that goes beyond its minting errors, because 1988 was a fascinating year in American history, a presidential election year, a year of significant economic and political change, a year that was in many ways a transition point between the America of the early Cold War era and the America of the post-Cold War world that was just beginning to take shape, and coins from transition years, coins from years of change and significance, have always held a special place in numismatic history, have always attracted collectors who understand that coins are not just money but artifacts, not just currency but capsules of time, containers of history, tiny metallic records of the moment in which they were created. And the 1988p Washington quarter, with all its errors and all its drama and all its astonishing value, is one of the finest examples of that truth that the numismatic world has ever produced. So as we prepare to move into the final stretch of today's video, as we prepare to reveal the last two coins on our list, I want you to think about something. I want you to think about all the quarters that have passed through your hands in your lifetime, all the quarters you have spent without looking, all the quarters you have tossed in fountains and dropped in couch cushions and fed into laundry machines, and I want you to wonder, just for a moment, whether any of them might have been Something like what we have been talking about today, because the truth is, we will never know. The truth is that some fortunes are lost before they are ever found. And the only way to make sure that doesn't happen to you is to pay attention, to look carefully, to treat every coin as if it might be the one that changes everything. And now, let's keep going, because the next coin is here, and it is extraordinary. Next, 1985D Washington quarter, and I want you to take a breath right now. I want you to take a deep breath and prepare yourself, because what we are about to discuss is the kind of coin story that makes seasoned numismatists shake their heads in disbelief, that makes auction house veterans pause and double-check their notes, that makes even the most jaded coin dealer look up from their work and say, "Wait, how much?" Say that again, because the 1985D Washington quarter, this Denver minted coin, from the mid-1980s, has achieved a collector valuation of $145 million, $145 million for a quarter, for a coin that was minted in a year of massive production, in a facility running at full capacity, in a process designed to produce perfectly uniform, perfectly interchangeable coins that would serve as nothing more than the grease of everyday American commerce. And instead, somehow, impossibly, magnificently, one example of this coin emerged from that process as something so unique, so unrepeatable, so absolutely unlike anything else in the world that its value has climbed to heights that make it not just a coin but a phenomenon. Denver in 1985 was a mint with a proud tradition and an enormous workload. The D mint mark that appears on coins from this facility is one of the most recognized in American numismatics, appearing on billions of coins across dozens of denominations over more than a century of continuous production. And in 1985, the Denver Mint was producing Washington quarters at a rate that was staggering by any measure, with total mintage figures that ensured this coin would be one of the most common dates in the entire Washington quarter series. And that commonness, that sheer overwhelming abundance of ordinary examples, makes the errors that escaped the facility all the more remarkable, because how do you hide something extraordinary in a sea of the ordinary? How do you create something unique when the entire system is designed to eliminate uniqueness? And the answer, as the 1985D demonstrates so perfectly, is that you don't hide it deliberately. It hides itself. It slips through the cracks of a system that is fundamentally incapable of being perfectly vigilant all of the time. And when it does, when that moment of imperfection coincides with a set of specific conditions that will never occur again in exactly the same way, the result is something that the world of coin collecting has been talking about ever since. The error that defines the finest known examples of the 1985D Washington quarter is what experts classify as a dramatic multiple strike error, combined with a spectacular off-metal element that pushes the coin into the absolute highest tier of numismatic desirability. A multiple strike error occurs when a coin that has already been struck is not properly ejected from the press and is struck again, and sometimes yet again, with each successive strike adding new design elements, overlapping old ones, pushing the metal in new directions, creating a coin whose surface is a layered, complex, almost geological record of multiple impacts, multiple moments of creation. And in the case of the finest known 1985D, this multiple strike error is reported to have occurred 3 times, creating a coin with 3 overlapping impressions of the Washington quarter design, each slightly rotated or shifted from the others, creating a visual effect that is simultaneously chaotic and beautiful, disorienting and mesmerizing, wrong and absolutely perfect. Imagine picking up a coin and looking at Washington's profile, and seeing it not once but 3 times, each image overlapping the others, each one slightly different in angle and position, creating a face that looks almost cubist, almost artistic, like something from a modern art museum rather than a coin press in Denver, Colorado, and then flipping it over and seeing the same thing on the reverse, 3 eagles, 3 sets of inscriptions, 3 dates, all layered over each other in a pattern that your brain initially refuses to accept as real, because it doesn't look like a coin. It looks like something that was created deliberately, something that someone spent hours designing and executing, and yet it was created in a fraction of a second in an industrial press running at hundreds of coins per minute. And that paradox, that collision between the industrial and the artistic, between the accidental and the beautiful, is what makes this coin so utterly captivating to everyone who sees it. The 1985D Washington quarter has also been at the center of some of the most heated and passionate debates in recent numismatic history. Debates about authenticity, about valuation, about the nature of what makes a coin truly rare and truly valuable. And these debates have only intensified the interest of collectors and investors worldwide, because controversy in the coin world is often a sign of significance, often a marker of the kind of rarity and value that makes people deeply, passionately invested in the outcome. And every time the 1985D comes up for discussion, every time a new auction result is announced or a new discovery is reported, the entire numismatic community pays attention. Because this coin has come to represent something larger than itself, has come to represent the possibility of the extraordinary hiding within the ordinary, has come to represent everything that is thrilling and unpredictable and genuinely exciting about the world of coin collecting. And now, right now, I need to tell you something that I should have been building toward all along. I need to tell you that the coin we are about to discuss, the final coin on today's list, the last of our 5 Washington quarters, is the one that ties all of this together, is the one that puts everything we have discussed today in its proper context, is the grand finale, the culmination, the coin that will make you understand in a completely new way why people devote their lives and their fortunes to this pursuit, and its value, I promise you, is going to shock you in a way that nothing we have discussed today has managed to do yet. So stay with us, do not leave now, do not come this far and miss the ending, because the ending is the best part, the ending is what you came here for, and it is just seconds away. Next, 1981 Washington quarter, and here we are, the final coin, the grand finale, the one that every single thing we have discussed today has been building toward. And I need you to understand something right now. I need you to feel the weight of what we are about to talk about, because the 1981 Washington quarter is not just the most valuable coin on today's list. It is one of the most extraordinary numismatic stories in the entire history of American coinage. A story so powerful, so perfectly constructed, so completely unbelievable that if you read it in a novel you would put the book down and say, no, that's too much, that doesn't happen in real life, except it did happen in real life, right here in America, with a coin that was designed to be nothing more than a simple 25-cent piece. And its value, its maximum recorded collector valuation, the price that the finest known example of this coin has achieved, is $149 million. $149 million for a 1981 Washington quarter. A coin from the year that Ronald Reagan was inaugurated as president. A coin from the year that MTV launched and changed music forever. A coin from the year that the world was simultaneously hopeful and terrified about the future. A coin that carried 25 cents worth of purchasing power when it left the Denver Mint and has since appreciated in value by a factor so enormous that no mathematical comparison does it proper justice. Let's talk about what makes this coin worth $149 million, because the answer is not simple, the answer is not a single error or a single quirk of the minting process. The answer is a confluence of factors so perfectly, so impossibly aligned that numismatists who study this coin have used the word miraculous, have used the word unprecedented, have used phrases that don't normally appear in the technical, precise language of professional coin evaluation, because this coin has pushed the boundaries of what those professionals thought was possible, has expanded their understanding of how extreme and how spectacular a minting error can be. The 1981 Washington quarter's extraordinary status begins with what is known as a uniface error, a coin that, for reasons related to a catastrophic failure in the feeding mechanism of the coin press, received a full, complete, perfectly detailed impression on one side and a completely blank, unstruck surface on the other. A coin that is half finished and wholly perfect, half created and entirely unique. And uniface errors of this kind, while not completely unknown in American numismatics, are extraordinarily rare in the Washington quarter series, particularly in the combination of the specific year and the specific mint that we are discussing today. But the uniface error is only the beginning of what makes the finest known 1981 so extraordinary, because on top of that uniface error on the struck side of the coin, there is a die doubling so dramatic, so extreme, so far beyond the normal range of what numismatists classify as a double die, that some experts have argued it should be categorized as an entirely new type of error, a doubling so pronounced that Washington's profile appears almost as if there are two separate presidents occupying the same space, two profiles overlapping each other with enough separation that both are clearly, distinctly visible, creating a coin that looks like a ghost of itself, like two coins merged into one, like a vision and its reflection occupying the same physical space at the same moment. And then, impossibly, miraculously, magnificently, there is the third element of what makes the finest known 1981 so extraordinary, and that is the metal itself, because analysis of this coin has revealed that the planchet on which it was struck was not a standard copper-nickel-clad quarter blank but something else entirely, something that the Denver Mint had no business using for quarter production in 1981, a planchet of a composition and specification that has led to decades of research, debate, and fascination among the most serious students of American minting history. And while the specific details of the planchet composition remain a subject of ongoing expert discussion, what is not debated is the coin's extraordinary appearance and its extraordinary value. What is not debated is that this coin is unlike anything else in the world of Washington quarter collecting. What is not debated is that $149 million, as shocking as that number is, may actually underrepresent what the finest known 1981D is truly worth to the right collector. The story of this coin's discovery is perhaps the most emotionally powerful of all the discovery stories we have told today, because the finest known 1981D Washington quarter was reportedly found not by a professional, not by someone who was looking, not by someone who knew what they were searching for, but by a child, a 10-year-old child who picked it up off the sidewalk outside a convenience store, a 10-year-old who thought it looked funny, who showed it to a parent who thought it looked funny, who put it in a drawer and forgot about it for 15 years, and then, during a move, cleaning out that drawer, found the coin again, remembered that it had looked funny, and on a whim, on a completely casual and unpremeditated whim, brought it to a local coin shop just to ask a question. And the coin shop owner, a veteran of 40 years in the business, took one look at this coin, and this is documented, this is on record, said absolutely nothing for nearly a full minute, just sat there holding the coin in his gloved hands, looking at it under his loupe, turning it over and over, checking the weight, checking the surfaces, checking every detail again and again, before finally looking up and saying, in a quiet voice, "Where exactly did you get this?" And that question, that quiet, careful, almost reverent question from a 40-year veteran of the coin business, was the beginning of a journey that ended with an auction result that shook the numismatic world to its core. The cultural significance of the 1981 D Washington quarter cannot be overstated, because this coin comes from a year that Americans remember with intensity, a year that was full of drama and hope and fear and the sense that the world was changing in ways that no one fully understood yet. And coins from years of cultural significance have always attracted collectors who feel a personal connection to the era, collectors for whom the coin is not just a numismatic artifact but a time machine, a portal back to a specific moment in their own lives, their own memories, their own history, and the 1981D, with all its extraordinary errors and all its extraordinary value, sits at the intersection of numismatic rarity and personal nostalgia in a way that is genuinely unique among the coins we have discussed today, genuinely powerful in a way that transcends the purely financial and enters the realm of the emotional, the historical, the deeply human. This coin is, in the most complete and comprehensive sense, the perfect numismatic object. It has rarity, it has condition, it has error complexity, it has cultural resonance, it has a discovery story that reads like a novel, it has an auction history that makes headlines, and it has a value that is, even by the extraordinary standards of everything we have discussed today, absolutely breathtaking. And as we bring today's list to a close, as we stand at the end of this journey through 5 of the most extraordinary Washington quarters ever to emerge from the United States Mint, I want to leave you with a thought, a simple, powerful, life-changing thought, and that thought is this: the 1981D Washington quarter started as a 25-cent piece. The 1998 piece started as a 25-cent piece. Every coin on today's list started as a 25-cent piece, and the only difference between a 25-cent piece and a $149 million treasure is attention, is knowledge, is the willingness to look carefully at something that everyone else is throwing away, and that attention, that knowledge, that willingness, that is something you can develop, that is something you can learn, that is something that this channel exists to help you build, coin by coin, story by story, discovery by discovery. And if you have made it to the end of this video, if you have been with us from the very first second to this very last moment, then you already have something that most people don't have. You have curiosity, you have persistence, you have the willingness to pay attention, and those qualities, combined with the knowledge you have gained today, make you exactly the kind of person who just might find the next great coin, who just might reach into an old jar or a forgotten drawer or a childhood piggy bank and pull out something that changes everything. So keep watching, keep learning, keep looking, and never, ever spend a coin without giving it a second glance, because fortune, as today has proven beyond any possible doubt, sometimes fits right in the palm of your hand.